Hirings, firings, and more. The tabletop world is shifting and shifting quickly. We'll talk about all that and more on today's Casual Friday. It's your
Shifting
intro.
faster than a poly couple at a swingers party.
Are you ready to get casual? Grab your favorite adult beverage or combustible plant and join us for our roundtable TTRPG discussion. Oh yeah, it's time for Casual Friday. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome to Casual Friday. We weren't here last week, which was a bummer. But so what happened was Brad challenged me for supreme authority of the landlocked warlocks, and while Brad and I were locked in a furious stalemate of combat, Ryan used that opportunity to infiltrate the inner sanctum and steal the power gem. So we don't know where Ryan is, but Brad and I have decided to put aside our differences because we are going to need to be united when Ryan eventually comes back to try to destroy us. Anyway, welcome to Casual Friday. Hey Brad, how you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, wizard battles are exhausting.
Tell you what. Um, but we have some crazy stuff to talk about. We weren't here last week, but that was all right because all the crazy stuff happened this week.
Oh, yeah, it did. Every day it was something, like one right after another.
Yeah. And the first thing we are going to talk about, unfortunately, this news came out on Monday, and the problem with having a show with a day of the week in the title is you can't do the show on a different day. So this news came out 4 days ago. So everyone's probably heard by now about Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, who recently left. I think it was less than 3 months ago because it was after the Monster Manual, right? And Monster Manual was February. So Perkins and Crawford left like March and April. They gave each other, if there were a few weeks between them before they left.
Yeah, that sounds
So they
about
could have
right.
two parties, probably.
Probably. You can't have going away cake 2 weeks in a row. You got to space that out a little bit.
Yeah, and
Uh,
you know, if you leave within the same month, they're going to try to just have one party for both
right.
of you.
Yep. Yep. Sorry for the background noise. My printer decided to, like, I don't know, it's having babies or something over here.
It's all good. So Chris Perkins, Jeremy Crawford left Wizards of the Coast and recently announced that they have gone to work for Darrington Press, which is fast now becoming one of the top names in the tabletop industry with just some hiring. Also, let me see, oops, that's not right. That's not the window. If I could zoom in here, oh, it's not going to let me zoom in on Matt's face.
Oh, it's a shit-eating grin if I've ever seen one.
I posted on Blue Sky a crop of Matt's face with the caption, Matt's aw shucks smile says, "Did we just poach the top two names in the industry? Yep, we got him." And you know what? Spencer Stark liked it. Spencer Stark gave it a like, which was a little tee-hee moment for me. Yes, and so people were this was sort of a pie in the sky dream of a lot of Critical Role fans, apparently. And the suspicions were stoked even more when Perkins and Crawford both moved to Southern California. Some people were thinking maybe they were going to come out together or something. Who knows? For Pride Month, they're like, "Yep, we're a couple now, and we're starting." I thought they were going to start a new company with Merles. That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, since Merles was working on his own game, I totally thought that that's what was going to happen. That was my prediction. I think I even said on the show that they're either going to join Merles at Chaosium or they're going to be a part of Merles, when he releases his own game. But
And they're sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, this surprised me. I didn't imagine this.
There's an article about this in the LA Times where they quoted Travis Willingham, and he basically admits to poaching them. He says at the time that when they announced that they were winding down, he said, "Hey, we would love to do something with you sometime." And I don't know if I don't think he can legally get in trouble for that because they had quit and done that. But he's basically saying, yeah, we said, if you leave WotC, we want dibs.
Yeah.
And apparently in this article, also Crawford and Perkins were a package deal.
Huh. They wanted to stay together. That's
Yeah.
cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I would do that for you, Jim. Like if someone bought out Landlocked Warlocks, I'd be like, only if Jim gets to come along too.
Well, unless you defeat me and become supreme leader, then you won't get your chance, Brad. Well, and so where do they say their titles in here? That Chris Perkins is creative director and Jeremy Crawford is game director. And we know that before Travis Willingham had the title, something very similar to creative director at Darrington Press, but Travis is also the CEO of 2 other companies, basically, because he's the CEO of the show Critical Role. He's also the CEO of their whatever production company they have with Amazon now. So I think Travis wanted to only be the CEO of 2 companies instead of 3.
Makes sense.
And I'm also betting that Crawford coming on now will mean that Matt Mercer can probably step away from Darrington day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, that would make sense. But of course, one of the other bits of news this week was that Ivan Van Norman left Darrington Press.
Yeah, and he was the game director was his title or something, which kind of sounds like Crawford's probably replacing him.
Sounds like it. So I don't know what went on there, but
yeah, I don't have a picture of Ivan, but you'd recognize him by his sideburns. He's a white guy, light hair, very, very, very thick, chunky sideburns. He appears in some actual play stuff from time to time for Critical Role.
But he has his own games. Like he's the Kids on Bikes guy.
Really?
Yeah. So
okay.
So I don't know. I doesn't seem like there's any bad blood between him and Darrington. My assumption, I don't know. I don't have any inside scoop, but my assumption is he wants to focus on his own stuff. So, but yeah, it's like last season in the NFL, like quarterbacks going every which way but loose.
Sure. And so these were not the only 2 names in the industry that moved this week. Todd Kenrick announced that he was laid off from D&D after 4.5 years. That's not very big. Brad and I were tinfoil hatting a little bit before the show started about why Todd may have been laid off. We over here Hasbro laid off 3% of its entire workforce. So I've worked at a company before where I've survived rounds of layoffs, and I've seen what happens when basically they send someone into the head of the department and go, "Who on your team can you live without?" That's where it starts. And so my tinfoil hat thing was that now that Crawford and Perkins are gone, when they came into the D&D office and said, "Who on the D&D team can you live without?" there was nobody there to speak up for Todd.
Right, because Todd's been kind of Jeremy and Chris's sidekick, right? Like doing all the videos and the press for the new edition and all that sort of stuff. And I'm almost positive. I couldn't find a source to confirm it, but I'm pretty sure that Todd's original role in this whole thing way back when is he was actually working for D&D Beyond. And he was like their, like PR YouTube guy. So because that's the first time I encountered Todd Hendrick in any sort of capacity was seeing his D&D Beyond videos. And then he started showing up in videos on the D&D YouTube channel. So at some point, I'm guessing in the process of the merger, the buyout, he transitioned from a D&D Beyond employee to a WotC employee. There was also
sorry, I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
There was also a stretch in the middle where he went off on his own and did his own YouTube channel. So I think he left D&D Beyond, did his own thing for a bit, and then ended up back at WotC. So I'm not really sure how his roller coaster ride went, but it seems like it kind of came to an abrupt end here this week.
And if you know your recent WotC history, the D&D Beyond teams and WotC teams did not like each other.
Right.
Because the D&D Beyond, the WotC team wanted to develop their own thing, and they were not happy about D&D Beyond being purchased. So it's entirely possible that everyone who came over from D&D Beyond was seen as an outsider. I've had that professional experience before where a company I worked for got absorbed by another company, and so we were viewed as second-class citizens by the absorbing company. And it was not a fun work environment when everyone looks down on you and is just, because you were from that little company they bought up.
Yeah,
But
there's an example of that here in my home state when Duke Power bought out Progress Energy and took over the nuclear power plant near my house. The merger required that the CEO from Progress stay in place, and the board was full of Duke people.
Mm-hmm.
They finished the merger. The first day at work, the CEO of Progress was let go. So it's like, we're going to make this like as close to 50-50 as we can. We'll make the whole board Duke people, but you get to keep the CEO as a Progress person. And then day one, he's let go. He's CEO for less than 24 hours.
Yeah. People suck. Speaking of that, that's not the only departure we got to talk about. Jess Lanzillo leaves Wizards of the Coast, and we don't even know if she had time to hang pictures on the walls of her office. She wasn't there for very long. She was there for less than a year, and I don't remember actually hearing much from her over the course of that year. Her exit message is pretty funny. After 8 years of Wizards of the Coast, I made the totally reasonable decision to leave a job where I got paid to argue about whether fictional lizard people can have tails. Of course they can. It's a pretty funny and heartfelt going away message. But so, tinfoil hat time. What the F is going on?
So two thoughts. Number one, you're getting rid of Jeremy and Chris, who have a whole bunch of institutional knowledge and experience across multiple versions of the game. And getting rid of Jess doesn't look like a big deal because she wasn't VP for very long. But she, from what I understand, is a big Magic the Gathering nerd. So of the VPs, she's the only one I'm aware of that's a real gamer, right?
Yeah, she started at MTG at Wizards.
Yeah. So she's been involved in Magic the Gathering for a long time, and from what I understand, is a big fan of the game and actually plays the game. So it seems like this could be one. They're offloading a lot of these people that are, kind of loyal to the game. And maybe this is a move because, we've heard all these rumors that they want to go more digital. They want to do more with digital. They want to do more with AI. So theory one is they're offloading all these people with all the roots to, the original design of these games in favor of people that are, more progressive towards, digital and AI. That's one theory. Probably the more plausible one, and it might be both, right? But my second thought is brand. It's about the brand. It's a matter of getting rid of these like recognizable faces, these people, and then really doubling down on the brand itself. Kind of the way, Hollywood did this when the MCU blew up, right? It used to be movie stars drove your movie studio, right? If you got Harrison Ford and you're going to make a Harrison Ford movie, everybody's going to go see a Harrison Ford movie. With the MCU, it's all about IP and brand recognition and all that sort of stuff. So you can grab some some nobody like Chris Hemsworth to play Thor, and you make him the star, right? He's a star because of us. He's a star because of our brand. And if he leaves, well, we're still the brand, right? That was the attitude in the film business 10 years ago.
Right.
Um,
There's one thing I want to point out here in the this EN World article about the Hasbro layoff. It says this is a mix of voluntary departures and layoffs. So it's entirely possible that Perkins and Crawford's whole thing about we want to wait till the 50th anniversary books are out and then retire was just posturing, and that they knew, that they were probably told far in advance, hey, this before next summer would be a good time for you to retire because we're going to lay off a bunch of people anyway.
mm-hmm.
So, and that could be why Lynn Zillow left. Also, my non-tinfoil hat, entirely reasonable, logical Occam's razor explanation for this is that there's no conspiracy. There's no like huge branding shift. That it's probably more likely. What I've seen at companies is I've worked for small, medium, and large companies, and I've seen, particularly in the large companies, when someone or a couple of really important people leave, it creates like a promotion chain reaction,
Mm-hmm.
and that can also create several vacuums. And you can, because of this promotion chain reaction, or even worse, a bunch of outside people being brought into teams to fill in roles that are created. Like you can leave work on Friday and enjoy your job and come in and work on Monday, and it'd be a completely different environment and atmosphere. And so when people leave, it makes other people want to leave because things are changing. Whether the company wants things to change or not, people leaving will make that happen, right?
Right. Like if you're my favorite boss and I despise Ryan, you leave and Ryan gets promoted above me, I'm not staying very long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That would have been funny if Ryan was actually here. But yeah, well, and the other thing too is, my understanding is that one of the good things WotC does is it pays well, and it also has very good retirement packages. So I'm guessing the voluntary part of these recent layoffs are, these folks who are taking, that retirement package and their severance, to have some much needed time off and kind of, go see what they want to do with their lives, after, making a really good salary for however long they've been working at WotC.
Brad, let me ask you this. Does Perkins and Crawford going to Darrington make Darrington the second most powerful or second most promising TTRPG company outside of Wizards?
I wouldn't say powerful yet, but I would definitely agree with you on promising. Paizo has a really solid track record. Paizo has been putting out solid game content for years. So it's hard to say they're more powerful than Paizo yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if, a year or two from now, that's the case. If Daggerheart stays as popular as it has been for the last 30 days, I mean, that's a lot to ask, but if it does, that's a really good sign. And if Crawford and Perkins are there, and they're putting out other games that catch on just as hot as Daggerheart has, yeah, I think it's real potential for sure.
Yeah, Twin still asks a pretty good question here. I've wondered this too. If now that Perkins and Crawford are there, if any stuff they make will be more compatible or less compatible. But also the main thing I think about now is I'm insanely curious what's going to happen with Drawsteel now. Because MCDM was the Great White Hope.
Right.
Before Daggerheart came out. I think because Candela Obscura didn't land the way people expected, Like a lot of people were counting Daggerheart out, and its success has been more of a surprise than I think was expected. Um, but I don't know, we'll see when Darrington hires Kelsey Dion and then brings Shadow Dark into their portfolio.
That would be
Um,
something else, right?
yeah,
Mr. Welch makes a good point. Like, uh, no one's going to be as powerful as D&D until the D&D until somebody has a brand that's going to be sold in Targets and Walmarts and all that sort of stuff. Like D&D still has the catbird seat.
right. And the reason why I framed the question as the second most promising or powerful company is because anytime it's happened a lot in the last couple of months because of Daggerheart and Drawsteel that people love to talk about toppling D&D. And I just saw an article the other day that was something like Pathfinder didn't actually outsell 4E. 4E actually sold more. And first of all, don't trust sales numbers when it comes to tabletop games because it's not indicative of how many people are playing the game. There's probably a ton of people bought Daggerheart just because they like Critical Role and will never play it. But we don't know. We're not going to be able to see stats on who's actually playing it. But thinking about toppling or outselling is the wrong lens to view victory or defeat.
Right.
You know, like no one's going to outsell Dungeons and Dragons because just like they were saying, there's no Shadow Dark baloney. There's no MC. There's no Draw Steel branded toaster you can buy at the Sears Roebuck.
Yeah.
Um,
But you can literally get customized Converse shoes with D&D stuff all over them.
right. But the right lens to view it as is like what game is going to foster better competition.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is, I hate this saying, but like this is an area where it's actually true about the rising tide lifting all boats. I think people like to say that in instances where it's not true to try to gaslight you, but this is one instance where that is true. That like the more good RPG games there are, the more good RPG games there will be.
Right. Yeah. Like, look at how many new indie developers, right? People like us who, put out a Shadow Dark supplement in the last year and a half, right? Started their own little individual game company. Here's my Shadow Dark supplements. Here's my Shadow Dark Dungeons and Adventures, right? And it's all because someone like Kelsey found extreme success, right, as an indie developer. And that's good for the hobby, right? Kelsey kicked down a door and a whole bunch of people have run through behind her, right? Making their own content, getting it out there. I'm not saying those people are getting rich by any stretch of the imagination. But they're able to realize a dream of, like a lot of us have, of publishing their own RPG content. And that's good for the hobby. We've got a lot of stuff. There's really more stuff than I can track.
Yeah.
Just just looking at just what's come out for Shadow Dark in the last year. It's a decent amount of content, and you got stuff coming from all over the place, from all sorts of small people like us putting stuff out there, getting it on a Kickstarter, or publishing it on D&D Beyond. It's just a lot going on, and that's good for the hobby. It's a lot of energy, a lot of creativity, and that fuels more dungeon masters, game masters, to have good ideas to bring to their table. And
there was something important you slipped in there where you said that no one is getting rich in this hobby. That's important to reiterate that I don't know how much money Kelsey makes from Shadow Dark, but I wouldn't be surprised if she also has a day job. I don't know for sure, but I'm sure she's probably not making mortgage money just from selling Shadow Dark books.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she is. If there's anybody out there that's at least paying their mortgage, right? It's probably Kelsey, and it's not, all the folks like us who are, putting out supplements to go along with Shadow Dark.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Matt built a company, right? With his Kickstarter money, he started his own company. But I don't think Matt Colville is like wealthy. He's not like Elon Musk wealthy. He's doing well for himself. He's doing good, and he's running his own business, and that's awesome. But
did I say Shadowheart?
Yeah,
Shadowheart is Bay. All right. So we could wax philosophic about the future of the industry and why all these people are getting fired and hired, but that's just what happens. We got to move on. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the Gunslinger from Valdis Spire of Secrets. This is kind of interesting because this class has drummed up. It's available on D&D Beyond. It's drummed up a little bit of controversy because you can get a book that has this class and a whole bunch of other stuff for like half the price of what it is on D&D Beyond. Gunslinger's over $14.99. You can get the full PDF from HM Press for $30, which has 9 other classes. There are some players point out you get 1/10 of the content for half of the price. Now the Gunslinger integrates with D&D Beyond, which is the reason why it costs money. And Brad and I were talking before the show that it's very interesting that as far as we can remember, this is the first class they've added to D&D Beyond since the Blood Hunter. Chat, let us know if that's not right, but I think that's right.
First class they've added that wasn't from WotC. They've added the Artificer, right?
Right.
And they've added all sorts of subclasses from third-party content creators. But no, I think this is the first full class from a third-party creator that they've added since the Gunslinger. And I think we've all heard the stories that Adam Bradford from D&D Beyond was the one that put the Blood Hunter out there. That wasn't a WotC decision. That was just Adam Bradford, because back then it was his company, he could do what he wanted.
Twin Steel, it is from Mage Hand Press. And the Valdis Spire of Secrets has been out for a while, but the Gunslinger is now on D&D Beyond. And X-Tray, a lot of people agree with you that it is very OP. Let's take a look at some of it. Oops. Nope, I gotta add it to the stage. I know this is a little blurry. My apologies. I'll do my best to read what I can. I don't own it on D&D Beyond, so I had to take screenshots of Ted from Nerd Immersion's video. Sorry, Ted, for stealing your content. But you stole it from WotC, so it's fine. Gunslinger is primary ability is Dex. Its hit die is a D8. Saving throw proficiency is Dex and Charisma. 2 from pretty much all the proficiencies: simple weapons, martial weapons, light armor. You get a daggers, revolver, bullets, explorer's pack. Here is the 1 to 20, the 1 to 20 grid. So you see that they have this thing called risk dice, which is kind of their version of superiority dice that you use to fuel maneuvers. And then here we get into the interesting stuff. At level 1, you get quick draw, advantage on initiative rolls. Double draw, you can draw or store 2 weapons that aren't two-handed. Then here's where we get to the OP stuff, like people had mentioned. The critical shot, your attack rolls with ranged weapons can score a critical hit on a 19 or a 20. At level 9, your attack rolls with ranged crit on 18 to 20, and then at level 17 on a 17 to 20. Which is better than the champion fighter, and that's kind of their whole thing. Then at risk dice, when I think of that, oh, it's on the, I gotta go back. You have 4 risk dice, which are D8s, dice expended when you use it, and then you use them to do maneuvers, which I'll get to in a second. Level 5 extra attack, level 5 gut shot. This is crazy. When you score a critical hit, excuse me, when you score a critical hit against a larger, smaller creature with a ranged attack using a weapon, the projectile lodges itself in the target for 1 minute or until the target replaces one of its attacks with dislodging the projectile. Its speed is halved and it has disadvantage on attack rolls. That feels like they stole that from Daggerheart. That's a very Daggerheart kind of combat move, like forcing the GM to clear a condition. Evasion at level 7. At level 11 overkill, they get an extra D8. You add your, but nonetheless, they'll 3 cheat death. You reduce to 1 hit point. It's not killed outright. You drop to 1 hit point instead. Level 15 Dire Gambit. Whenever you roll initiative or score a critical hit, you regain 1 expended risk die. Then the maneuvers, bite the bullet is bonus action. You can spend 1 risk die to gain temporary hit points equal to the number rolled in the die plus your gunslinger level. You can spend a bonus action to gain blind sight. You can spend a risk die as a bonus action. You seeing a trend here? You can move up to 15 feet and reload any ranged weapons you're holding. Grazing shot, spend a risk die to deal damage anyway. Maverick Spirit, when you fail an int, whiz, or charisma ability check, you can spend a risk die to add it. Skin of your teeth when a creature hits you. Rolls on your number AC, so that's like a shield. But then we get into the... Brad, I've been talking for a while. You have thoughts so far?
I was just looking at chat, and Twin Seal said that he thinks that Heavy Arms has a better version of the Gunslinger. But the thing is, a lot of your casual fans and casual players, right? They just use whatever's on D&D Beyond.
Right.
Like most of my players don't pay attention to where it's from. They'll find it on D&D Beyond and like, can I use this? It's on D&D Beyond. So once it's on D&D Beyond, it's hard, to not have players want to use it, right? Because it's there, they can see it.
100%.
But go ahead. You were gonna elaborate on the design.
Well, first, Dost, we spent the first 20 minutes of the show talking about that. Yeah, 2 big name D&D people went to join Darrington Press. So the subclasses are where things get bonkers because there's 6 of them. And the last time we discussed a UA class, I said it seems like they're going on this trend where they make every class have so many subclasses that it functions as an every class. And I am righter now than I was before. I'm so right. The Gunslinger subclasses are the Deadeye, a precise eagle-eyed marksman, high roller, gambles with their life and fortune, no risk is too high, the secret agent, a covert agent with license to kill, Spellslinger fires spells as well as bullets in deadly bombardments, trick shot ricochets bullets to hit targets from any angle. Oh, thank you, Keith Ritchie. Gonna Gunslinger and call him Roland. Yeah, you've forgotten the face of your father, Keith Ritchie. Trick shot. Trick shot. Ricochet bullets to hit targets from any angle. White hat, a law-abiding protector of the weak that never blinks in the face of danger. So they're all in here. Like the Spellslinger's full-on paladin. I don't remember all the details from Ted's video, and I don't own this. But there is one subclass that is super dope that I want to talk about. That if I played this, I would absolutely pick. That is the High Roller. At level 3, the High Roller gets Liar's Dice. When you make a damage roll with a ranged weapon, you can expend 1 risk die as a bonus action and declare it to be a hidden roll. Roll the damage in secret and declare any total you wish. The GM has the option to call your bluff, in which case you reveal the damage dice you rolled. This is different consequences. If the GM calls your bluff and you lied, the damage you deal is halved. If the GM calls your bluff and you told the truth, the damage you deal is doubled. If the GM doesn't call your bluff, the damage you deal is whatever you declared.
Huh.
And they've just taken the game of Liar's Dice and dropped it here into a subclass. And dropped it into a subclass. Keith, I was just kidding. Hope you know. They've dropped it into a subclass, and I approve. This is awesome. This one also, later gets a feature called at level 14, double or nothing. When you score a crit, you can, using a ranged weapon, you could gamble, roll a d20 if the result is 10 or higher. roll all the attacks damage 4 times and add them together and still do 2 times. So this whole subclass is based around the concept of pushing your luck. And yes, this is awesome. And I think that's yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Brad? Or any of the subclasses?
I was actually trying to think of that gambling mechanic where where I'd seen that before, and I think Mr. Welsh is alluding to it in the chat. The Hex Slinger from Deadlands, the Deadlands RPG. If I remember right, that whole game used playing cards instead of dice, and it had a lot of like gambling mechanics. It's been forever since I've looked over that game. Like that game came out, God, 20 years ago, if I remember right. It's been around a long time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've never played Deadlands, but I think that is the game with the cards.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, when you're designing anything that's inspired by the Wild West, like gambling mechanics just make sense, and I think that's cool that they put that in there. There's also some Wild West themed skirmish games that use cards instead of dice for that same reason. It's clever and appropriate, to the feel of the character. I think that's cool. But yeah, I mean, and I know it's something that WotC has done. This whole, like, speaking to your point and Twin Steel's point about the, like, kind of the everything class. But I feel like a lot of third party design I see does this too.
Yeah, I don't, I'm just kind of being frivolously nitpicky and just trying to do a gotcha on WotC when I talk about the everything classes. But I mean, really, I don't think there's probably not actually anything wrong with having a million subclasses, so every class can be an everything class. I mean, I think WotC, if you really wanted to give people flexibility, you would divorce ability scores from other things. Like it was good you move them from races to backgrounds, but why do they need to be attached to backgrounds at all? Just let us put the pluses where we want.
Yeah.
Why if now it's the same. Before I had to pick half orc if I wanted this thing. Now I have to pick farmer if I want this thing. You haven't given me more freedom. You've just shifted the choice over here.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should just do away with ability score bonuses altogether, right? Because that just speeds up character creation.
Yeah.
And so you just change your basic stat array by 2 or 3 points, right? And then you don't have to worry about getting ability score bonuses to add to your original scores and all that stuff. Like, just take that part out of the game.
Yeah.
And if you took that part out of the game, then you could also roll, 46, drop the lowest. And you're mathematically going to be closer to that stat array average because you wouldn't be adding, a +2 and a +1 to what you rolled, right? That would keep those numbers in a more reasonable range as well. I think they should have just done away with those ability score bonuses altogether.
So we have to move on because there's still a lot that we need to talk about. Is this the right thing? Nope, that's not the right thing. Okay, so something that I just randomly came across is, a lot of the topics on the show are from Instagram ads like Hit Served. This is launching on Kickstarter. This is the Endless Dungeon. And one of these gifts is really good. Oh yeah, this one. So you get these little tiles that you can then place down as hexes to build your own little dungeon. And then they also come with these adorable little dungeon caps. So you can lay out your dungeon and then use it as dungeon caps for Fog of War. And I thought this was really super cool until I saw first that they're 3D printed and they come in a big chunk that needs to be painted. And then when I saw how much it costs, it's 150 quid for the base model that comes with 110 pieces of $110. I don't know what 150 pounds is in US dollars right now, but if it's $150 for 110 pieces of 3D printed plastic, I'm not going to feel great about that. But I love this idea because I've run tables where I had the whole, like a whole dungeon crawl on a giant ass map.
Yeah.
And I found it extremely cumbersome and hard to manage. Hard, like if you try to fog of war parts of it and somebody spills their Cheetos on top of it, it's what I like. What I generally doing if I'm going full map, like if it's a dungeon crawl, I like to draw the dungeon on a sheet of paper, and then if there's combat, then we go over to a grid.
Hmm.
But I think this is a perfect happy medium because you can still have fog of war, you can have people going around and dungeon crawling, and it's very small space at the table.
Yeah. I like that idea. I've never done it before. Well, I mean, I guess we did it back in first edition when we were kids and we didn't have all this stuff. You would just draw the dungeon on graph paper, and then the players had a blank sheet of graph paper, and they were trying to draw their own version of the dungeon on their side of the DM screen. But the idea of having like dungeon tiles that are, what is this? Probably like 10 millimeter scale,
Yeah.
or even smaller, so that you get the dungeon exploration with these mini sized tiles, and then you have your your ultimate dungeon terrain circle, or your 28 millimeter dungeon tiles that you set up the room when actual combat breaks out. I like that idea. That'd be cool.
And they come with these itty bitty meeples. Thanks, Keith. Cheetos are just orange worms for party to kill. Yeah, I do. I like those stories about dungeon masters using M&Ms for baddies and stuff, or gummy bears and stuff, and then when you kill them, you get to eat them. There's a lot of urban legends about that happening.
I have used gummy bears before just as a joke. Nobody wanted to eat them once everybody was touching them on the game board.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's solid. Unless you're using chopsticks to move things around the game board, it's not. You're like, okay, we're gonna have combat. Everyone first, please go wash your hands. Time for combat. Go wash your hands. Wash up, everyone.
Phil, the Star Wars micro machines. Yes, I remember those. Like, I had a whole collection of those when I was a kid. The little die-cast metal Star Wars that were probably like, I don't know, like 10 millimeter scale or 15 millimeter scale. They were small.
I remember micro machines.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah.
There you go. There's the voice of reason. Starburst wrapped candies.
Ah, yes, there you go.
That's smart. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, you see, we should have played at your table double crit fail. Sounds like you knew what was up. So moving on, we're still not even at the halfway point. There's only two of us here. We should have gone through. I thought I put a bunch of topics on the agenda because me and Brad will just get through it. But then we had to talk for 30 minutes about people getting fired and hired.
Well, that was on the thumbnail.
Fair. So I put this as in they took our gerbs news. This is one of those things that I get the emails from D&D Beyond, and they have their big announcement at the top, and then they slip in like 12 things that are just very smaller announcements, and this is one of them. Demio, X Dungeons and Dragons Battle Marked. I'd never heard of this thing before. So I have to explain what Demio is, because I didn't know what it was. So Demio is this. It is basically a 1 to 4 player co-op video game that's flavored like let me make this bigger. That's flavored like a tabletop, like a VTT.
Huh.
So it is a video game, but you roll dice, and if you see on the they just went away, but on the left there, those portraits, if the sound was on, you can hear the people chatting as they're playing. So they're discussing, like, oh, I'll throw a fireball at this guy, I'll attack that guy, oh, I need healing, and they're playing with these cards. So this is super clever in that it's a video game, but it looks like a VTT, right?
Yeah.
And this is why I say they took our gerbs, because this is D&D without a dungeon master, right?
Yeah.
Even more so than Baldur's Gate 3, because this is straight up, you're on a grid, you're moving a virtual token, you're seeing stats, you're casting, like, it's full on a tabletop simulator, but
Yeah.
it's got a programmed dungeon master.
I mean, I've been kind of scoffing at this idea that WotC is just going to turn Dungeons and Dragons into a video game, but I don't know. With all the recent changes they've made, this might be the future of D&D.
It might be. Interestingly enough, though, it was kind of interesting that it was buried in, like, it wasn't a big announcement. Maybe this is the kind of thing. Maybe they were worried if they made a big announcement that more people might have come to the same conclusion that I did. That, like, oh, this is how they replace Dungeon Masters. It's not with a Chat GPT prompt. It's with what looks like a video game.
Right. And if you do it this way, this makes them a lot more money, because, when you have to buy the next dungeon, you have to buy the next adventure in order to keep playing, right? So if this is the direction they're going, with a virtual dungeon master, as opposed to, like, what everybody's feared, a Chat GPT version, this is a way to keep selling content. So that'd be interesting to see. Like, I remember Hero Quest. You remember Hero Quest, the board game? It recently had a big resurgence. They relaunched it on Kickstarter. I remember when Hero Quest came out, there was a group of guys we knew who played D&D. And when they found Hero Quest, they were thrilled. They're like, dude, this is D&D without a dungeon master. This is what we want. And like, they were surprised, like, that we still wanted to play D&D and we didn't want to play Hero Quest with them. So even back then, there were people who, everybody wanted to play. No one wanted a dungeon master. This is in the 80s, right? Or late 80s. There were people who didn't want a dungeon master, and they were turning to board games like Hero Quest. So,
sorry, Twin Steel's on a roll today.
Get that bag, WotC. But yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, this could be, I don't think it would ever replace Dungeons and Dragons proper, right? But this could be an alternative that gets a lot of people to play.
Yeah. Russ just saying easier to play Frosthaven. That's interesting. Is there a VTT for Frosthaven? Like, can you play that on Gloomhaven and Frosthaven online?
I'm sure you can with tabletop. What's it called? The
Tabletop Simulator is one of them.
Yeah, it was like Tabletop Simulator, I'm sure.
Huh. Interesting. I didn't know if they had ever. I have always been interested in Gloomhaven and Frosthaven and never actually played them. I think the 75-pound box intimidates me. Okay, Double Crit Fail says the Gloomhaven does have a digital version. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
The more you know. All right.
Yeah, and Mike's right that Hero Quest does kind of have a dungeon master, but it's not nearly as hard or as involved as the D&D dungeon master. But I clearly remember back in the day people being very excited about Hero Quest as an alternative to D&D because it was more board gamey and it was faster and easier to play in a lot of ways. And it came with everything you needed in a box. Unlike Dungeons and Dragons, you had to like go talk to the wargaming guys and find out like where to get your miniatures from. and all the wargaming guys were always like, well, all we have is realistic medieval miniatures. We don't have like, whatever those weird things are in your books. It's like, who doesn't want to displace your beast? What's your problem, dude?
All right. So moving on, I had a quick little story about a game I played in earlier this week. At the beginning of the session, the DM asked us all, if your characters were professional wrestlers, what would their walkout music be? And then we all went around and said what our characters' walkout music would be. And then later in the session, just enough time had elapsed for us to forget about it, we had a combat. And in the first round on each of our turns, the DM played our walkout song at the beginning of our turns. And it was just a little thing, but it was very nice. It was a very nice touch. So you should steal that if you can. It was, we were playing online, and he has like a plug-in for Discord, so he can just search songs and play them. It might be harder if you're at a table, but it was a really nice touch because it was like everyone had their theme music for that combat.
Nice. That's cool.
And moving on, we go to the part of the show that we call the catch up, where we just say, hey, what's new? And but first, before we do that, got to tell you about a couple things. First, if you're not subscribed to the Landlocked Warlocks, you should be. Also, my YouTube channel has about 6,920 subscribers last I checked, and I'm watching it closely to get so I can screenshot at 6969. I'm terrified I'm going to miss it. But we're almost there.
About to hit 7,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go.
And the other thing I was going to tell you, that Brad and I and that other guy, Ryan, what's his name? Ryan Doyle or whatever. The three of us wrote a one-page rule set, and it has been on DriveThruRPG. And guess what? Now you can get it on itch. If you like to do your TTRPG shopping on itch.io, you can get it there. It's for free. I had to scroll back through Discord to find where I shared the UDARE files because I didn't have them on my computer to upload them. Hopefully these are the most current versions, but it should be fine. So yeah, we made this game. You can use it to run absolutely anything in the world for a one-shot, and Brad and I have both run it, and we can attest that is true.
Yeah, my players like it. It's a really fun, fast, easy way to play. It's great. Crazy story. And this is, and it's not really that crazy. Don't get excited.
Okay.
But this is how far geekdom has come. I was hanging out at a bar a couple weekends ago, and my wife introduced me to one of her new friends, and back in the day, I never would have been caught dead talking about Dungeons and Dragons in a bar full of people, but my wife's new friend asked me about Dungeons and Dragons. She'd heard about my YouTube channel, and we got talking nerd stuff. And I mentioned that, we made UDARE and this, one-page rule set. And she's like, I made my own game too. And it's kind of this like board game style thing that she made. And we're sitting there like talking to D&D and board game design over drinks in this bar. Something that I never would have imagined happening, like talking about D&D in such a public setting, and especially such an adult setting. When I was a kid, like it was like, do you play D&D? Yeah. Don't tell the jocks or they'll kick our ass.
That's great.
As a kid, I never would have imagined that moment, right? Because we were, we were so in the closet with our Dungeons and Dragons back in, the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I have a very similar story. It was just a few months ago. It was on my son just graduated 4th grade. On the last day of school, I took him out for ice cream. There's an ice cream shop just down the street from his school, and a lot of his fellow students attend that ice cream shop. So I took him there to ice cream, and while we were eating our ice cream, there were a couple of high school kids at the table next to us arguing dex versus strength-based fighters. And I was like, oh. And they weren't hushing in hushed tones. They were discussing it out loud like it was perfectly normal. And there were cool kids around too. And they didn't. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the old guy jumping into their conversation, but I was like, oh, it was very cute.
Yeah.
What is the best way to Alta Vista Udare? You need to ask Jeeves. Twin Steel.
That's
It's not
Jeeves.
available on Alta. It's only available on AOL keyword Udare and through Ask Jeeves. So Brad, what are you up to?
I've got a lot going on. I've been super busy with stuff. I don't know if I'm ready to talk about any of it though.
Goodness.
Yeah, so I don't know. Those of you who are my faithful followers may have noticed I haven't put out a video in the last couple of weeks. It's because I've got this like big project in the works. So
Very exciting. I've been doing nothing but Daggerheart videos for a month, and it's been a really good month in terms of views. Daggerheart is getting the clicks. People are searching for it. Very searching for it. But I've got a video coming out on Sunday. I think I haven't made it yet because it's been a crazy week. But I think it's going to be a non-Daggerheart video.
Oh.
And a little surprise. I made a board game, and I'm going to give it away for free.
Cool.
And I think if I have time tomorrow, I'll make that video for Sunday. Or if I don't get a video out this Sunday, you'll know why. It's because I was just busy.
Yeah, Daggerheart's the new hotness. Your videos have been getting a ton of views.
Yeah. Daggerheart is the new hotness. Still sold out everywhere. If you can get your hands on a copy, good luck.
Yeah, it was funny. My wife just went to visit her brother in Seattle. And she texts me. It's like, do you know what Daggerheart is? Mike just got Daggerheart. And I was like, yeah, I might know a little bit about it.
Hey, Nacho, running Daggerheart is awesome. That's super sweet. I've been running, I don't know if we even said anything about this, or maybe we might have mentioned it a couple weeks ago, but I've been running Daggerheart for that guy over there and Mr. Doyle, who's not here, and also our friend Mike that Brad just mentioned. And we've been running it. We had a session 0, and then we've had 2 sessions. And what do you think, Brad?
I like it. I mean, I didn't have like any real high hopes or expectations for Daggerheart. Like I read the playtest stuff and I read Candela Obscura and I was like, that's cool. But I wasn't pumped about it. I wasn't thrilled. It was just like, yeah, neat. But now that I've played it, I really like it. It's a good game. It's well designed. And I see a lot of the criticisms that people have levied against Daggerheart. Like I can see why they said the negative things they've said if you just read the rules, right? But once you actually play it and figure out how all these different rules like dovetail into each other, right? It makes a solid game. It really is a good game.
Yeah, Twin Steel, Ryan was talking about that because we were when we were playing, I ran a travel segment for these guys, and then I was asking them for feedback after, so we were kind of talking about how that travel segment went, and Ryan was like, the thing I'm making with Ross kind of fixes a lot of these problems. But they weren't really that much of problems. But anyway, like earlier this week, I've seen a lot of really bad Daggerheart takes. I like it a lot. I don't know if it's going to be my forever system, but I'm going to stick with it for a while at least. I'm pretty curious about Draw Steel too. That looks pretty promising. But I've seen a lot of bad Daggerheart takes, including on the Mastering Dungeons podcast, which is one of the bigger podcasts in our space. Sean Merwin and Teos Abadia, they're both game designers. Sean Merwin wrote a lot of the D&D 5e adventures that you've played. Maybe didn't even know it. He wrote a lot of Adventures League. He wrote Peril in Pinebrook, written all kinds of stuff. Well, they did a review of Daggerheart this week, and they biffed it. They sounded like two people who had played a one-shot and hadn't read the book, and their opinions were all based on how power gamers could exploit the rules. And I listened to their interview, and I just thought, I could give you a 10-minute diatribe on how power gamers could exploit the rules in Kids on Bikes.
Right.
I can give you a diatribe on how you can exploit the rules in Mothership or Skate Wizards. I don't think those people are going to be attracted to Daggerheart. I think those people are going to play Daggerheart and they're going to exploit it, and then 2 months later they're going to go on to something else because it doesn't have all that game breaking high level stuff that makes it so easy to exploit. That it doesn't have a lot of like builds, like very specific multi-class builds to get you to this specific things. I don't think those people are gonna enjoy Daggerheart, and they're gonna leave, and then the rest of us will have it.
Yeah, it doesn't have the level of crunch that most of your optimizers, we'll call them optimizers to be, nice,
Mm-hmm.
instead of, other names that we could call optimizers. But it just doesn't have that level of crunch that to really make min-maxing and, all that sort of stuff, exciting to that type of player. Draw Steel might. I think Draw Steel is going to have a considerable amount of crunch.
Well, that's really interesting that you say that, because I looked into Draw Steel for the first time earlier this week, and I was really surprised by what I saw, in that it says there's no hexes, there's no dungeon crawling. It's basically combat and social situations and leveling up, and that's pretty much it. It says like hand wave everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty wild. It says, like, you don't need to roll for random encounters. You don't need to do it's like it's not this, it's not that. It's basically crunchy combat and then hand wave everything else. And they were real focused on the cinematicness of it and thinking in beats. And I was like, I don't really know if this is as crunchy as everyone thinks it's going to be.
Yeah. That'll be interesting to see. I haven't done a deep dive on it. I've only kind of perused the playtest stuff. It feels very fourth edition to me. So I'm guessing, my interpretation is that there will be ways to optimize the combat part. But yeah, I mean, they call their game master the director. Like, they're intentionally designing this game to be cinematic, right? As much as we love the idea of like figuring out good exploration rules, like that seems to be something that's really important to D&D fans, is good exploration rules. We need good exploration rules. But how many movies really have exploration scenes in them? Right? Most of the time in a movie, you're doing overland travel. It's a montage just to give you the sense of time. Right? So most movies, if you're going for cinematic gameplay, that's all they focus on is the dramatic dialogue setting up the plot, and then the action scene that delivers the plot, right?
Yeah. Trey says something interesting here. DC 20 Tales of Valiant MCDM have a lot of 4E in them, it seems. So does Daggerheart. Daggerheart has a surprising amount of 4E in it too, but it's interesting you bring up DC 20, because I think DC 20 might be the dark horse system that takes off, because I supported the Kickstarter and got the playtest, and if you want crunch, that's the system. It's extremely crunchy. It's very flexible too, but it's very crunchy. Rules for everything. Like if you're a power gamer who's ready to move on from 5e, I think DC 20 might be the big surprise of 2025, I think.
You think DC 20 could give Pathfinder 2 a run for their money? Could you see Pathfinder 2 folks switching over to DC 20?
Not at first. I mean, because DC 20 is just one guy who's writing a 500-page book. But if he's smart and has a really good license, and if he has people make stuff for it before it's released, like if he can launch with support from some known third-party creators, Because that's the thing. DC-20 might have better rules than Pathfinder 2e. I don't know, but it certainly doesn't have a decade's worth of adventures and supplements and stuff written for it.
Yeah.
And that's a tall mountain to climb, right?
Yeah. It's one thing to do Shadow Dark as one person, right? Like, not to criticize Kelsey at all. I love her game and she's a great person. But it's easier to do a game like Shadow Dark all by yourself, because Shadow Dark's not that crunchy, right? To do something that the level of DC-20 is trying to do all by your lonesome, that's a big task.
Plus, that dude has a job. He's like a high school coach. He's like a high school teacher, and he's making a 500-page game. So, if anybody could do it, I think that guy could pull it off. Coach Allen is like, he's got enough energy for 3 people. I think he could do it. And Mike, this is a valid point. I think the fact that he's been working on it publicly for so long is a good sign. He's gotten lots and lots of feedback, and there's a video of him running it for Brennan Lee Mulligan. So I think, but that's a valid point. It is his first game. Yeah. I spent 2 years writing my first novel, and then I threw it away and never looked at it again, and it was garbage.
Well, I mean, and having a community around you while you're designing the game, I think, helps a lot. I mean, Twin Steel could speak to this, right? Because Twin Steel was part of the Discord community that helped to work on Nimble, right? Mm-hmm. So Nimble's designed by one person, but then you got guys like Twin Steel who come up out of the Discord group and play testing and get involved and help design the game as well, right? So that's the weird thing about the internet, like that you can, establish, this community online, and that community can support you in what you're doing and even become a part of what you're doing, right? And then when the game actually comes out, now you've got the built-in audience, the people who were there the whole time, supporting you. It's a whole new world from, what we used to call the fantasy heartbreaker, which is where someone would slave away all on their lonesome and, hand bind a bunch of zines and take them to a con and try to sell it. And, everybody looks at it like, oh, this is garbage because you haven't had feedback or proper playtesting. Because you're doing it all in your basement by yourself. You might be still in your basement, but you're not doing it by yourself because, you've got a community of, a few hundred to 1,000 people online helping you do it.
Right. 100%. We have a roundtable discussion topic for today, but we've kind of already talked about it. We kind of spent the first 30 minutes of the show talking about the tabletop landscape. There is one, and we talked about WotC, Darrington, Shadow Dark, MCDM, and Dark Horses like DC-20. I don't even know if Coach Allen has a name has a company, or if it's just DC. I don't know if DC-20 if he has a company formed. You should, though, Alan, if you're watching this, make a company, make an LLC, protect yourself.
No doubt, yeah.
But there was one thing in the roundtable discussion we haven't talked about, and I don't know if we talked about this on the show yet. When Daggerheart first came out and I gave like a brief overview of it, I mentioned the Daggerheart license, and I had only skimmed it at that point. But there's been more and more people talking about the Darrington Press license, which is basically they took it's the Candela Obscura license, and they just changed the words so that it applied to all Darrington Press products. But there are a couple of more heinous restrictions in the license that didn't appear at first on skims, but people started unearthing. Where what it sounds like is Darrington hired a lawyer to come in and talk to them, and somebody with a really high charisma sat them down and told them all the ways that they could be in legal trouble or legally liable for things people might do. And that scared the crap out of them. And then so they put in the license that they can update the license whenever they want. That's bad thing number one. And number two, if they update the license and you update your product, you automatically agree to the terms of the new license. If you make a product and never touch it again, you don't have to do anything to it. But if you ever want to fix a typo, then that automatically updates you to whatever license is current at the time you republish. That's not good. And what was the other thing? The other thing was about it was release of liability. You can't sue Darrington if they come up with something similar to your product.
Right.
And that's pretty scary to people too, because it's a license to take your stuff and turn it into something that they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one's reasonable though, right? Because if you're iterating on a game, right, it's real easy for people who have nothing to do with each other to look at a game system and be like, oh, this would be a good tweak, this would be a good change, and you could come to those things, independently, pretty easy, and end up with the same kind of design.
Right.
I remember when back when the Star Wars trading card game, the original Star Wars trading card game. This was before Magic was super popular. I designed a Marvel superheroes trading card game. I was in my 20s. I didn't know anything about, I knew very little about game design, and I didn't know anything about IP and all that sort of stuff. But I designed this Marvel superheroes themed trading card game, and I mocked up a bunch of cards in like a PowerPoint presentation, and I emailed it to I forget which company it was, whatever company was making Marvel, Marvel board games at the time, and so I emailed that to them, and I got this really nice letter explaining that we can't open your email, we can't look at what you designed, because if it's anything close to what we've already been working on, you could then accuse us of, stealing your ideas. So good luck with your game design career, but just be aware you can't publish this on your own because it's Marvel IP, and we can't even look at it because that would compromise us. It's basically the tone of their email. So I was proud of that game too. It was cool.
When I was 8 years old, I designed a laser tag game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and I sent Nintendo a letter, and they actually wrote me back. They said something very similar, but it was nicer because I said I was 8. And they were like, "This is a really great game. You're doing a great job, but unfortunately, we can't use this. Keep, blah blah blah." I was probably like, "They don't appreciate my genius."
Yep.
But the thing is, I think you're probably right that it's a reasonable clause, and their license is probably all entirely reasonable. But is it going to hurt people? Is it going to dissuade people from making Darrington Press content? Because I've been thinking about it. I was fully gung ho, had tons of ideas for Daggerheart supplements, and then I saw that, and now I'm thinking about it. I'm not for sure.
Yeah, trying to remember. There is another clause in there that states that if you're already work in progress on a game, you can choose which license. So like if I forget which paragraph, but there's a paragraph in there that says that if you're already work in progress, there's conditions, and I think what it does is allows you to choose which license. So if you're halfway through a design and they update the license and you don't like the new update, you could still publish it under the previous license, as long as you can prove that you were already working on your product before the new license came out. That was my understanding of. So there's a little bit of protection in there. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna dissuade third-party publishers from making content. But from a Critical Role standpoint, they're not a huge company like WotC, right? They're like two or three mistakes away from all of this going away, right?
Could be, yeah.
I mean, if Matt Mercer pulled a Pee Wee Herman, right, then and got canceled, then this whole thing could fall apart, right? They're not that resilient of a company yet.
Yeah.
So who knows? It'll be interesting to watch what the tabletop industry becomes over the next 10 years. But clearly, we, as a hobby, we are on like the verge of a big shift. I have no idea what that shift's going to be, but really it started with the OGL debacle, and everything that's happened since. And the gaming industry is just, it's like I said, it's going to be a huge shift, whatever comes out of all of this. It's going to be interesting to watch. That's why I'm glad we have the show. I have somebody to talk about it with.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't know what Darrington is going to do, but now the people who hate WotC can very easily transfer that hate over to Darrington because the faces of the company are the same now. If you hated Perkins and Crawford, you can continue hating them at a different company.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's a great
Yeah.
point. Like all those grognards who already hated 5e and didn't like Jeremy Crawford because he was part of 5e and because of his personal life or whatever, like prejudice, sick people out there. And then those same people didn't like Darrington Press because Critical Role was ruining the hobby by bringing in all these theater kids, right? So it's like Wonder Twins powers of hate activate.
Yeah, I am very curious to see what's going to happen. This new tabletop landscape is going to be interesting. Yeah, seismic changes happened in 2023, and who knows? Maybe with all these people leaving WotC, maybe they'll bring in a bunch of good people. Maybe they want to bring in a new generation who cares about people like Mackenzie D. Armas. I can't. I get the last name confused with the actor. Anyway, she.
Oh, go ahead.
She's in videos. She's fantastic. We need more of her, right?
Yeah.
Like she cares about the game. You can tell she's like geeking out about subclasses and whatever in those videos. And we're like, yes, we need everyone at WotC should be you.
Yeah,
Should be
and James
excited.
Wyatt, and James Wyatt, right?
Yeah.
If the two of them are the future of D&D, D&D's in good hands. I like both of them. But
I gotta Google it. I can't remember her name. I think it's Mackenzie Armas. Mackenzie de Armas. Is it Anna de Armas? Who's the really hot really hot actress? Anna de Armas? Come on. Why can't I think of her name? She's like one of the most beautiful women in the world. It doesn't matter. I don't know why we're spending time on this. We need Ryan here to balance us, apparently.
Yeah, Anna de Armas is the actress.
Anna de Armas. Okay.
So who's the one that works for WotC?
Yeah, Mackenzie de Armas is the one who works for WotC. Anna de Armas is the one who dated Ben Affleck. And now there was your pop culture moment on Casual Friday.
I really like Trey's typo, Deborah Ann Wolf instead of Deborah Ann Wall.
She's a big D&D name.
Yeah, I would say Deborah Ann Wall as my third wife.
She's great. So the last thing that I have on the agenda here was just a little tidbit of news, and that they announced in D&D Beyond now, you can, under character preferences, you can turn on and off homebrew, core rules, expanded rules, 2014 core rules, and anything else that's legacy. And the really wild thing is that before you couldn't do this. That's the lead here in this story. You could go in and there's still no way, as far as I know, for the dungeon master to do this blanket in the campaign, which is what you really want. but the DM can now tell people, hey, look, we're not playing with 2014 rules. Just go turn those off.
Hmm.
Because the campaign I'm playing in right now, we're using sort of a mix of 14 and 24 rules, and it is a freaking mess. It's a big mess. We're all 19th level anyway, so it's fully chaotic all the time anyway. But then some people have the old version of Lucky, some people have the new version of Lucky. It's wild. But you can at least, your dungeon master can say, hey, turn that on and off now, whereas before D&D Beyond wanted to sell you as many books as possible, so they didn't want to hide the options from you. But I'm sure this is a result of persistent, chronic complaining from fans who are like, I don't want my players to have silvery barbs. Could I please turn off silvery barbs? And they finally give you the option now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, going back to talking about optimizers, like I think playing a hybrid of 2014 and 2024 at the same time, that's an optimizer's dream right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pally with old smites, but new lay on hands rules.
Yeah. I'm sure there's ways the old Lucky feat and what was the elven archery feat, the way those two interacted, I'm sure there's ways you could abuse that with a new subclass. That would be you get up to some hijinks with that, I'm sure, pretty quick.
Yeah. You know what? I think we've come to the end of our show. We've run out of stuff to talk about. And Ryan has not returned. If you missed from the beginning of the show, Brad and I decided to put aside our differences because Ryan stole the power gem and we don't know where he is. And so Brad and I are working on presenting a united front for when Ryan returns, because he will be more powerful than ever before.
That's scary.
It is very scary.
But yeah, it's great show, fun stuff. Like, just, it's interesting to see the direction of the hobby, and that's definitely just wild to think about all these different games that we're getting, that have all come up within like the last 3 years. It's just crazy.
Yeah, wild times. Things are changing. Who knows what we will be able to tell you next week? But oh, the other thing I was gonna say, that Daggerheart we've been playing, we've been recording it, and we're gonna start running that here. Maybe July 11th. Maybe wait till it's all done, because we don't want to go July 4th. That's a Friday. So yeah, probably look for that actual play. Probably like maybe every Friday in July. And we'll see.
Cool.
We'll see.
Oh, one last thing before you wrap up.
Yeah.
Because it might happen this week. Where's Todd Hendrick going to end up? Is he going to go to Darrington? Is he going to go to MCDM? Where's Todd Hendrick going to go?
If our former friend and current nemesis Ryan Doyle, he said in our chat something that I thought was pretty wise. He said, Darrington and Critical Role don't need any more spokespeople.
It's true,
because every single one of them is a voice actor and spokesperson. Yeah, if MCDM is smart, Intercasso, Colville, if you're watching, and I'm pretty sure you are, go hire Todd Kenrick. You need him, because all of you guys are bad on camera.
That's a good point.
Get Kenrick.
Yeah, I mean, Matt's great when he's reading from his teleprompter, right? His script, his videos are great, but yeah, they could use Todd Kendrick to do their interview stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it from us. Thanks for watching, and next week maybe we'll be here, maybe not. We'll see if Ryan makes his triumphant return and if he survives it. All right. Bye, guys. See you later.
See ya.